I stood in my own birthday crowd and felt like a ghost. Loud music, flashing lights. People raised glasses to me, yet their eyes kept sliding to my father's diamond watch. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. "Happy 24th, Bella," a man shouted. I forced a smile. "Thank you." He leaned closer and whispered, "Your dad said you might like a new car. Can you put in a good word for me at his bank?" The smile dropped before I could stop it. He did not care about me. He cared about the bank. I turned and almost bumped into Aaron, our family driver. He held a silver tray of drinks. "Miss Bella, are you all right?" he asked in a low voice. "Do I look all right?" I muttered. He glanced at the guests. "They are here for the money, not for you." I nodded once. The truth stung, but it was clear. When the party ended, I walked through the silent house, chandeliers off, marble floors cold on my bare feet. I stopped at the mirror in the hallway. The girl staring back wore a dress that cost more than some people's yearly rent. She looked rich, bored, and empty. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. I cut my hair the next morning, right there in the bathroom. Long curls fell into the sink like dead leaves. My chest felt light, then heavy, then light again. Aaron knocked on the door. "Miss Bella, breakfast is ready." I opened the door. "Just call me Bella." He looked at the hair on the floor. "What are you doing?" "Leaving," I said. "Leaving where?" "Someplace no one knows, Bella the rich girl." He frowned. "Your father will not allow it." I shrugged. He cannot guard every street in Lagos. That afternoon, while my parents met investors downstairs, I packed a small backpack, 2 plain shirts, faded jeans, running shoes, and the money I got from selling 3 designer bags online. Cash, no names. Aaron stood by the garage. "Need a ride?" "No." "No," I said, closing the backpack. "If you drive me, they'll track me. I'll take the bus." He opened his wallet, pulled out a worn 500 naira note, and pressed it into my hand. "For your first bus fare," he said. I smiled, real this time. "Thank you." I slipped out the side gate, heart beating like a drum. The mansion behind me looked huge and hollow, like a museum after hours. I walked toward the main road, rolled the backpack straps tight on my shoulders, and whispered, "Let the real world begin." I stepped onto the hot tar of Akare bus stop and felt Lagos breathe on my neck, thick, wet air mixed with exhaust. A danfo screeched to a halt. "Surulere! Surulere!" the conductor yelled, banging the yellow side panel. I squeezed a crumpled note in my hand. It was all I had for fare. Inside, bodies packed shoulder to shoulder. I wedged myself by a window that would not open, the metal frame warming my skin. Sweat slid down my back, and I pressed my bag to my chest, scared someone might feel the weight of the cash I carried. When the conductor stretched an oily palm toward me, I counted each dirty coin before placing them in his hand. He did not thank me. He only yelled for the next passenger. I got down at a narrow street lined with small kiosks and blocky concrete houses painted in peeling pastel. A room-to-let sign hung on a rusted gate. I pushed it open and met Mrs. Mary, a stout woman with deep laugh lines and eyes that judged fast. "Name?" she asked. "Bella," I said, catching myself before adding the surname everyone knew. She showed me a room no bigger than my old closet. Single window, thin mattress on a plywood frame, bucket in the corner for water. 80,000 a year, she said. All paid now. I handed her the money I'd set aside. She flicked through the notes, nodded, and slipped them into her scarf. No noise. No late men, she said. I promised both, even though the silence already felt like noise in my ears. That first night, the power cut at 8. The fan stopped, and mosquitoes hummed like tiny engines. I lay awake listening to shouts from a nearby bar and the slam of water pails in the shared bathroom. I missed the chill of the mansion's air conditioning, yet felt oddly proud of my sticky skin. At dawn, knocks echoed down the hallway, neighbors queuing for water before the compound's small tank ran dry. I joined them, clutching my plastic bucket. A woman with cornrows glanced at me. "Good morning, Ma," I said, voice low. She smiled, surprised by my respect, and replied, "Morning, my sister." That simple bond, one greeting, felt stronger than the gold bracelets people once offered me to curry favor. Days blurred into a routine of coins and cues. I learned the art of exact change, sorting 5 naira pieces on my palm like puzzle chips so I could board a bus without drawing the conductor's anger. When I returned each evening, I greeted Mrs. Mary with a crisp, "Good evening, Ma," and she would grunt approval. The nod behind tinted glass was gone. This was real speech, carrying my breath with it. But food was harder. I lived on instant noodles and pure water sachets. Sometimes, hunger pinched so sharp it felt like a hand in my stomach. Twisting, I reminded myself this pain was honest. Honest was what I wanted. Work, though, that was harder to find. I walked street after street in old sneakers, asking kiosks, bakeries, even tailor shops if they needed help. I kept my sentences short. Do you need staff? I can sweep, serve, run errands. Owners shook their heads. One man stared at my trimmed nails and soft voice and said, "You never carry cement before. Go home." I swallowed the sting and thanked him. By dusk, my feet burned, but I forced myself to walk back instead of spending precious cash on transport. At night, I opened a notebook and wrote the day's expenses in shaky numbers, just like Mother's accountant used to do. Only my columns stayed small. A week later, clouds gathered and rain chased people off the road. I ducked under a zinc awning that covered a dusty bookstall. Warped plywood shelves stacked with sun-bleached novels, textbooks missing covers, children's comics tied with string. The smell, paper, dust, and old glue pulled a memory. Father reading bedtime stories in a leather chair before his phone calls took over our nights. An older man with round glasses sat on a low stool, wiping spines with a rag. A name tag cut from cardboard read Mr. Benson. "Looking for anything?" he asked. "Maybe," I said, my voice small against the drum of rain on metal. He studied me. "You read?" "Every night," I said before thinking. He smiled. "Good. Most passersby don't." He pointed at a leaning stack. "Those need cleaning. Help me, and we'll talk after." I spent 2 hours dusting until gray flakes lined my forearms. I didn't stop even when my back cramped, because his eyes kept checking my progress. When the clouds emptied and the sun peeked out, Mr. Benson said, "Come tomorrow at 7. If you last a week, I pay." My heart knocked against my ribs. "Yes, sir," I said. The next morning I arrived early. We unpacked new, fairly used, books from grain sacks. My job was simple: wipe, price, arrange. Yet it felt big. I learned to guess a customer's budget by their shoes. I learned to haggle without sounding rude. Mr. Benson never raised his voice. In quiet moments, he told stories: a boyhood in Ibadan, a brother lost to sickness, a dream of owning a real storefront one day. I listened, dust clouding the air like thin fog. Sometimes my palms itched to tell him who I was, to say I could buy him that store before lunch. But I held the truth back, because giving money would be easy, and easy was not why I was here. Heat had a way of settling inside the stall by noon. I wiped sweat with the edge of my shirt and kept stacking books. Torn romance novels, faded cookbooks, dog-eared study guides. Customers came, argued, laughed, left. Small children pointed at picture books. Office workers grabbed quick dictionaries. I felt each sale like a point of light. Even rejection taught me. When someone walked away after calling a price too high, I swallowed pride and lowered it for the next buyer. Pride tasted different on this side of the city. Less like arrogance, more like hunger. On the 7th evening, Mr. Benson locked the rusty gates, then walked to the back of the stall. "Come," he said. He placed a small envelope in my hand. "First wages." My fingers trembled. I opened the flap. 2 crisp 1,000 naira notes and 5 smaller bills, faintly damp from his counting. They smelled of sweat and sun. I breathed them in, surprised at the warmth that filled my chest. In the mansion, money passed in stacks wrapped with paper bands. None of it ever felt alive. These notes beat like a pulse. "Thank you," I whispered. "You earned it," he said simply, then added, "Come Monday. Work is steady if you stay steady." I nodded, unable to speak. I walked home through pink dusk. At a food stall, I bought akara, hot bean cakes that hissed in oil, and a bottle of cold malt. I ate on a wooden bench, feet swinging like a child's. The cakes burned my tongue, and I laughed out loud because pain from hot food was real, small, earned. A woman beside me raised an eyebrow. I just smiled wider. Back in my room, I sat on the thin mattress, spread the notes on the bedsheet, and counted them again. 5, 6, 7. I left the numbers slow so the moment would stretch. I slipped one note into a plastic jar labeled "Rent" with a marker. The rest I folded under my pillow. I wanted to sleep on them, keep them close, let them whisper that I could stand on my own 2 feet. The ceiling fan, when the power returned, turned in slow circles. I wrote in my notebook, "Earned today." Felt heavy, then light. I stopped, pen hovering. What else? I added, "Nobody knew my father. Nobody cared." I set the pen down and stared at the words until they blurred. Before dawn, a rooster crowed 3 streets away. I rose, wrapped a wrapper around my waist, and joined the water line. Grace, the neighbor with cornrows, was there. She handed me her bucket while she tied her scarf. "Hold for me, Bella," she said, using my name like it belonged. The trust warmed me more than the early sun. When the tap finally ran, cold water splashed my feet. I filled my bucket, balanced it on my hip, and walked back slowly so nothing spilled. Inside my room, I washed my face, feeling the chill chase sleep from my skin. Then I pulled the notes from under the pillow and stared at them one more time. My hands no longer shook. Maybe, I thought, I can belong here. Maybe. I pressed the money back under the pillow, lay down, and listened as the city woke. Buses honking, vendors calling, radios crackling news. My eyes closed, but I did not drift off at once. I kept hearing Mr. Benson's words, "You earned it." I whispered them to the ceiling, a promise and a prayer, and waited for the next chapter of this life I was finally writing for myself. The stall was quiet the next Friday afternoon. The sun sat right over the tin roof and turned the air thick like soup. Mr. Benson had gone across the road to buy bread, leaving me alone with the books and a plastic fan that just pushed hot air around. I was wiping dust from a box of old novels when a voice said, "Do you have any poetry?" I looked up. The man standing there wore a gray t-shirt with small oil spots and jeans torn at the knee. His hands were dark with grease, the skin in the creases almost black. A wrench poked from his back pocket like a tail. But what caught me was his smile. Wide, easy, nothing held back. "Poetry?" I echoed, because most people asked for school textbooks or quick thrillers. "Yes," he said. "Something about rivers. Or maybe rain. I like the sound of water on a page." He rubbed the back of his neck, leaving a faint smear. "Hope you don't mind the mess. I came straight from work." I shrugged. "Books don't get offended." I bent beside a low shelf and pulled out our thinnest stack, battered anthologies, odd slim volumes with pages yellow as plantain chips. I laid them on the wooden counter. Some covers were torn off, some spines curled like dried leaves. He picked one up. "Songs of the Quiet River," he read aloud, lips moving. "How much?" $800, I said. We both knew the price depended on my mood and his bargaining skill. He flipped a page, fingers gentle despite the stains. "The paper feels tired," he said, half smiling. $700? I paused, trying to read his face. He met my eyes straight on, no flicker toward my clothes. No once over, just waiting. I nodded. "Seven's fair." I wrapped the book in old newspaper. He slid a crumpled 1,000 naira note toward me. "Keep the change, buy yourself water. It's too hot today." My mouth opened. People rarely gave extra. I pushed the balance back. "I can't." "Please," he cut in, hand firm yet kind. "A good book deserves a cold drink." Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small rag, and wiped fresh sweat from his temple. "Name's Tunde, by the way." I froze. The name felt like Lagos traffic. Common, loud. It clashed with the private rule I had made, stay unseen. But refusing to share my name would look strange. "Bella," I said, voice steady. "Nice to meet you, Bella. This place yours?" "I just work here." "Well," he said, lifting the wrapped book, "thank you for saving poetry from the sun." He tipped an imaginary hat, turned, and walked toward the road. The back of his shirt stuck wet to his shoulders. He crossed into bright light, and for one odd second my chest clenched as if something important was walking away. He came again 2 days later. I spotted him before he reached the stall, still in work clothes but holding a jar of thick red oil. He set it on the counter. "Palm oil from my mum's farm?" he said. "Exchange for another poem?" I laughed in surprise. Mr. Benson glanced from his stool, eyes narrowing, then went back to sorting receipts. I picked up the jar. "You think we run swap meet?" "No," Tunde replied, leaning on the counter, "but I thought maybe you cook. And money is boring. Poems shouldn't cost only money." His words fluttered in my stomach. I pretended to study the shelves so my face stayed calm. "What do you want this time?" "Something with nights and stars." He tapped his chin with a greased finger. "Nights when you feel you might float away." I pulled a worn copy of Under Open Skies. He read the first stanza out loud, slow, tasting each line. When he finished, he placed the jar beside my elbow and paid $500 in cash anyway. Before I could argue, he asked, "Do you ever read the books you sell?" "Sometimes," I said. "Read me one line. Any page." Heat rose in my cheeks. My reading voice felt childish compared with his. But I flipped to a random poem and read, "The night is a small boat. We climb in without oars." My tongue stumbled on the last word. He smiled. "Good," he said. "You made it sound like a door opening." Then he left, not looking back. After that, he visited every few days. Always with something odd. Fresh plantains, a packet of nuts, once a single spark plug for luck. Each time he bought a shabby book and asked me to read a line. He never haggled again. He still wore the same work clothes, smelling of engine heat and metal, but his laugh cracked open the stall, letting fresh air in. Mr. Benson noticed. One evening, as we shut the gate, he asked, "Friend of yours?" "Customer." I said, "Too quick." "He looks at you like you're more than that." I shrugged, busy with the lock. But my fingers shook, and the key scraped metal until Mr. Benson gently took it. "Be careful, Bella," he said. City men have stories inside them. I nodded, though I wanted to defend Tunde. Instead, I walked home, jar of palm oil heavy in my bag, thoughts heavier in my head. My room smelled of hot concrete. I opened the jar, set it on the floor, and stared at the golden red pool. It looked like evening sunlight caught in glass. I had lied to get this. Lied about who I was. Lied about where I came from. I pushed the jar under the bed and hugged my knees. Outside, children chased each other in the corridor, bare feet slapping cement. One girl shouted, "You're it!" Her laugh bounced through my thin door. I envied her simple truth. I thought of the mansion's silent halls, of Aaron the driver asking if I was all right. He had been honest, and I had left him with a lie too. Said I was safe, said I would call. I hadn't. The ceiling fan rattled to life when power returned, snapping me out of the past. I stood, wiped my cheeks, and resolved to speak fewer lies tomorrow. But the resolve felt like thread in a storm, thin, fragile, likely to break. Next afternoon, Tunde arrived with a book already in hand. He held it up, a cheap novel titled Broken Seams. "I found this at Yaba Market," he said. "Thought you'd like the cover?" It showed a girl in a faded dress staring at a cracked mirror. "I do like it," I admitted. "Good. Now your turn. Pick one line, make it strong." He folded his arms, playful but firm. I opened the book, throat dry. "She wore her shame like a bright cloth so no one would guess it was shame," he nodded slowly. "That line is heavy." "I hope it's not too heavy," I said, half joking. He shook his head. "Heavy is fine. Real things weigh something." He set the book down. "Tell me, Bella, what weighs you down?" My breath hitched. The stall blurred. I wanted to say money that never felt like mine. A name that blocks the sun. Instead, I forced a smile. "Long days of dust." He watched me, then let the silence fall away. "I get it," he said at last. "I smell like engine oil all night. Same weight, different scent." Relief and guilt tangled in my chest. I had dodged the question yet again. I felt safe, but each dodge added a brick to the wall I swore to tear down when I left home. That weekend, he invited me for lunch near his workshop. "Come see where I grind all day," he joked. I hesitated. Meeting away from the stall felt dangerous. Secrets have more room to slip in open spaces. But curiosity tugged harder. I agreed. Sunday noon, I walked toward the address he texted. The street buzzed with clanks of metal and hiss of welding fires. Tunde waved from a shade tree beside a half-open garage. Grease streaked his cheek. "Welcome to my palace," he said, arms wide. Inside, battered cars rested like steel animals. Tools hung from walls. A small radio played high-life music. He introduced me to two workers, Josh and Slim, and then led me to a corner bench where plastic plates steamed with rice and stew. "Mum cooked," he explained. "She never trusts my cooking." We sat side by side, eating with spoons that bent in the heat. He asked about my week. I spoke of pricing errors, of children who tried to steal comics. I listened as he described an engine that died every Friday at 4, like it hated weekends. We laughed until Slim shouted he needed Tunde's help. Duty called. While Tunde crawled under a jeep, I wandered the workshop. I found a notebook on a wooden crate, blue cover, corners dog-eared. I opened it and stared. Sketched engine parts filled most pages, but in between, neat lines of poetry floated. A piston is a fist begging for release. Grease is the river that never finds the sea. My throat tightened. This man wrote in secret, like I lived in secret. Tunde slid out on a trolley, wiping his brow. He saw the notebook in my hand and froze. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "You found my mess," he said, half-laugh. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Why hide it?" He shrugged. Grease men don't read poems. Grease men write them, I corrected. He looked away, cheeks darkening. Silence stretched until clatter from Josh's hammer filled it. Tunde took the notebook gently, placed it back. You should get home before the clouds break, he said. Road floods fast here. I nodded, but an ache bloomed in my chest. I had touched his hidden truth while keeping mine locked. The unfairness stung. Rain started halfway to my room. I ducked under a market awning and waited, water drumming tin roofs. In my backpack, Tunde's book Broken Seams, a gift I couldn't refuse, pressed against my spine like a reminder. I pictured his shy eyes when I praised his poems. My lie felt larger than ever. When I reached the compound, I found Mrs. Mary tapping her foot near my door. Bella, your rent jar was open, she said. She held the plastic container, half full. Money shouldn't lie around. Thank you, Ma, I muttered, taking it. But her frown lingered. You careful, she warned, then walked off. Inside, I sat on the floor, back to the door, jar in lap. Coins rattled against my thigh. Another warning, another reminder that walls of lies are flimsy. A window left open, a jar left out, and wind blows everything apart. I opened Broken Seams and read until night swallowed the room. Every page spoke about mirrors and hidden cracks. I underlined lines with a cheap pen, marking places where the heroine almost told the truth but didn't. My heartbeat matched hers. By midnight, I closed the book and whispered, I can't keep this up. Yet morning came and I tied the same wrapper, carried the same bucket, greeted Grace with the same smile. At the stall, I arranged books, waiting for Tunde. When he arrived, I managed to act normal, but each sentence felt like walking on thin glass. He noticed my wilted tone. You okay? Tired, I said, partly true. He handed me a small chocolate bar, melted at the edges. Sugar helps. I forced a laugh. Thanks. I broke off a piece, let it soften on my tongue. Sweetness filled my mouth, but underneath, bitterness brewed. All day I replayed the notebook moment, his quick shame, my hidden riches. I tried to tell myself I needed more time, but time was a rope, long, until it snapped. That night I opened my notebook and wrote a single sentence. Every lie grows teeth. I stared at the words until they stopped moving. I imagined telling Tunde, I'm not who you think. I saw his smile fade. I tasted fear, but also relief. Rain hammered the roof again. Thunder shook the window. I hugged my knees, listening to the storm argue with itself. In that roar, I heard two hearts, one beating to stay safe, the other pounding to be honest. I did not decide that night, but the next morning, the first thing I saw on my shelf was the jar of palm oil, still bright red, still waiting. And I knew the waiting could not last much longer. Rain came down like stones on a Monday evening. The sky had been warning us all day. Thick clouds, dull air, silence that felt like a held breath. Mr. Benson shut the stall early so the books would not soak. He left for his sister's place, umbrella raised like a weak shield. I stayed behind, waiting for the downpour to calm. The tin roof shook under each hit. Water rolled off the edges and carved small rivers in the dust. A voice called my name from the road. Bella! Tunde splashed toward me, one arm high to protect a brown paper bag. He was soaked to his knees. Grease streaks mixed with rain on his shirt, turning the fabric 2 shades darker. He stopped under the awning, breathing hard. What are you doing here in this flood? I asked. Bringing dinner, he said, lifting the bag. Akara, fresh from Mama Dede's stand, she fries even in storms. He gave a crooked grin. Besides, poems taste better with beans. I laughed, more from nerves than humor. Thunder cracked, close. The street was empty except for one danfo stuck in water up to its hubcaps. The driver stood on the roof, yelling at no one. Lightning flashed, bleaching the world white. For a second I saw the lines on Tunde's face, lines built by sun and worry. Then darkness snapped back. Inside, I said, pointing to the stall. We ducked through the wooden door and pushed it shut. Rain drummed so loud it felt like we were in a drum. The stall smelled of dust, paper, and now fried beans. Tunde set the bag on a crate, pulled out 2 newspaper-wrapped balls of akara, and offered one to me. Oil soaked the paper. We sat on upturned crates facing each other. Only one bulb lit the space, powered by a shaky generator at the carpenter's shop next door. Steam floated from the akara. I bit in. Hot, crisp outside, soft inside. Pepper stung my tongue. Heat filled my chest. I closed my eyes, sighed. This is heaven. Simple heaven, he said, chewing. The best kind. Wind pushed rain through a crack in the door, sprinkling our ankles. Tunde stretched his legs, wet jeans sticking to his skin. I saw a long scar on his left shin, raised, pale. My gaze traveled higher. Another scar, thin like a knife cut, near his elbow. A faded burn mark on his wrist. He caught me looking. "Accidents make maps," he said, tapping the burn. "Each line tells where I've been." "Does it still hurt?" "Only in memory." He wiped crumbs from his palm. "Want to hear the stories?" I nodded, mouth full. He pointed at the burn. "Age 12. I tried to lift a hot muffler for my uncle, dropped it on my arm. Lesson, wait for things to cool." He traced the shin scar. "Motorbike crash, age 17. Lesson, pride is a hard road." He touched the knife-thin line. "Owing money to the wrong man, age 20. Lesson, pay debts or pay blood." The casual way he spoke made my stomach twist. "You've been through a lot." He shrugged. "Lagos writes on us. What about you? Any scars?" I thought of manicured lawns, private guards, and the hidden ache of being seen as a bank pass. My scars were inside, but I could not show them without tearing the lies wide open. I shook my head. "Nothing worth telling." He studied me a moment, then let it drop. "I promised myself each scar would push me forward, not hold me back," he said. "That's why I save every spare naira. One day I'll open a real workshop with lifts and clean floors, no landlord shouting about rent." I pictured him in a bright space, walls painted white, his name on the signboard. The image felt right. "You will get there," I said. He glanced around the stall. "And you? Where do you want to land?" The question hit me like cold water. I chewed slow, buying time. "Someplace I can breathe," I said at last. It was true, even if incomplete. "Fair," he said. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, the same blue book I had seen. "I wrote something today. Mind if I try it out loud?" "Please." He opened to a fresh page and read, "Rain pounds the roof, but the heart stays louder. If fear is thunder, hope is the hand that reaches with fried beans in a storm." His voice was soft, words clear despite the roar outside. The poem was simple, almost like a child's song, yet it filled the stall, pushing the rain back. Warmth climbed my neck. "It's beautiful," I said. He closed the notebook, eyes shining. "First draft. Needs polish. Rain helped." He tucked it away, then leaned back, arms resting on the crate behind him. "You know, Bella, I never believed words could keep someone alive. Then I started writing, and each line felt like one more day." I wanted to say how his words kept me alive, too. Instead, I reached for another akara ball. Oil had soaked through, the paper tore. I licked my thumb, smiled. "Mama Daddy does good work." He laughed. The sound filled the stall more than any poem. Another flash lit the space, and he looked suddenly older. Shadows deepened the line between his brows. He turned the grease-stained rag in his hands. "Can I ask you something?" I tensed. "Ask. You're kind, smart, but..." He searched for words. "Sometimes it feels like you're only half here, like part of you stands in another room." My chest tightened. The lie pressed against my ribs. I coughed, stalling. "Maybe I'm scared." Of what? Of being seen. The half-truth tasted sour. Tunde nodded like he understood. "I'm scared too," he said. "Scared I'll drown in debt before I reach that workshop. Scared I'll end up like my father, running, always owing." He paused. "Scars outside heal. The ones inside, you have to speak them out." Rain eased to a soft patter. The stall felt very small. I opened my mouth, ready to spill everything. The mansion, the false name, the money under my pillow. But footsteps splashed outside and voices broke the moment. Mr. Benson's nephew dashed in to say the generator was flooding. The spell broke. Tunde stood, wiping his palms. "I'll help him," he said. "Stay dry." He grabbed his wrench and left. The door swung shut, leaving me alone with cold akara crumbs and a heart thudding like the roof moments before. The next morning, sun glared as if rain never happened. I left early, jeans still damp at the hem. At the bus stop, a danfo screeched up. I squeezed in, standing, one hand on the ceiling bar. My mind replayed last night. Tunde's scars, his poem, the question in his eyes. I decided I would tell him today. I could not build anything on lies. Traffic crawled. At Ojuelegba Bridge, the conductor yelled for fares. I dug into my pocket. A honk ripped behind. Driver cursed. In the chaos, I did not see the black SUV at first. Tinted windows, sleek body, nothing like the rickety taxis around it. The window slid down. A familiar face leaned out. Aaron, the driver from home. My throat closed. He must have been running errands in this part of town. His gaze swept the danfo, searching. Our eyes locked. Shock widened his. He opened his mouth, but the danfo lurched forward and merged into the next lane. The SUV had no space to follow. Horns blared, drivers shouted. Aaron's face vanished behind buses and smoke. My pulse hammered. Maybe he wasn't sure it was me. Maybe rich girls in Lagos sometimes ride danfo for fun? No, he knew. Aaron had changed my diapers as a baby. He would know me in darkness. I got off 3 stops early and walked side streets to the stall, heart battering my ribs. Every sound felt like an alarm. I kept glancing back, expecting the SUV to appear. Nothing. At the stall, I tried to focus on the books, but titles blurred. Mr. Benson asked if I was ill. I lied and said I skipped breakfast. Tunde arrived mid-morning with 2 steaming corn cobs. For the brave reader, he joked, but stopped when he saw my face. What happened? Words tangled. I could not add another lie. Just tired. He frowned but nodded. He handed me a cob, sugar cane sweet, and we ate in uneasy quiet. Midday haze baked the roof, turning the stall into an oven. Sweat pooled under my shirt. Time crawled. At 4, a shadow crossed the doorway. I looked up, expecting a customer. My breath left. My mother stood there, pearls at her throat, silk blouse spotless despite the dust. Beside her, my father, suit jacket over one arm. Behind them, Aaron, gaze low. A black SUV idled at the curb. The street fell silent in my ears, though danfos still honked. Mother's voice cut through. Bella, come home. My legs froze. Mr. Benson rose from his stool, confused. Tunde turned from a shelf, eyes darting between us. Father stepped inside, shoes squeaking on the rough concrete. He scanned the cramped space, the cheap books, the lone bulb. His jaw clenched. This is where you've been? I couldn't speak. Shame, fear, anger, all crashed at once. Mother's tone softened but held steel. Pack your things, dear. We'll talk in the car. Tunde's brow knit. Bella, he whispered, question turning to hurt. I felt the ground drop. The fragile life I'd built, a room, a stall, a budding friendship, stood on one leg, shaking. If I stepped toward my parents, it would topple. If I stayed, the truth would topple it anyway. Aaron's eyes met mine, kind but sad, as if saying, I tried to wait. The SUV engine hummed like a clock, counting down. My mouth was dry. I reached for words, but found none. Behind me, the shelves of battered books seemed to lean forward, holding their breath. Outside, the city kept moving, loud and bright, unaware of the storm inside the stall. I swallowed, heart pounding like the rain on tin from the night before. The choice I had run from now filled the doorway, wearing pearls and an expensive watch. And I, just Bella in faded jeans, had nowhere left to hide. Aaron closed the stall door behind my parents, but the hum of the SUV still leaked under the hinges. Silence stretched between the 4 of us, Mother's perfume mixing with paper dust, Father's polished shoe tapping a slow, strict beat. Tunde wiped his hands on his jeans, the oil leaving darker stains. His eyes asked questions I had spent months dodging. Father's voice came first. You will settle your account here? Pay the owner for his trouble and come home. Tonight. He reached for the wallet in his jacket. No, I said, surprising even myself. The word was small yet rang like a bell inside the tiny shop. Mother stepped closer. Her pearls clicked. Bella, you've made your point. You've had your experience. Let's not drag strangers into it. Her gaze flicked to Tunde, as if he were one of the ragged books, something to donate once used. He isn't a stranger, I replied. My voice wobbled, but the truth pushed upward like water under pressure. I faced Tunde. He's my friend. Tunde folded his grease-marked arms. Can someone explain? He asked softly. Bella? I swallowed. They're my parents. He nodded once, slow. And the mansion I joked about? I took a breath that scraped my lungs. Real. Mr. Benson rose from his stool, clearing his throat. Maybe we all step outside. Father cut him off with a curt shake of the head. This is family business. Mr. Benson's face tightened, but he gathered papers and slipped into the rain-stained back room. The stall felt even smaller. The next sentences poured out like a dam breaking. I told Tunde about the birthday party, the diamond watch, the choking feeling of being bought. I told him about cutting my hair, renting the single room, queuing for water, counting coins for bus fare. I told him about the jar of palm oil under my bed and the lies that multiplied each time I spoke his name. Words rushed until they tangled, and I gasped, tears burning behind my eyes. I lied because I wanted love that costs nothing, I finished, voice raw, but the lie became its own cost. Tunde didn't move for a long beat. The bulb above us buzzed. Thunder rumbled far off like a growl in another room. Finally, he exhaled. "Thank you for telling me," he said. He turned to my parents. "I need to talk with Bella alone." Father's brows rose, but Mother gave a tired nod. 5 minutes, she said, as if granting a clerk a break. She and Father stepped outside, Aaron trailing. The door clicked shut. Rain began again, gentler than before, a hush behind glass. Tunde rubbed the back of his neck, the habit he used when words crowded him. "So," he began, "the poems, the akara, the cracked roof, all this time you carried another life." "Yes." "Was any of it real?" "Every moment," I said, "except my last name." He studied me the way a mechanic studies an engine that keeps stopping. Not angry, just searching for the hidden fault. "Why didn't you trust me with the truth?" "Because the truth always made people see money first," I whispered. "I wanted someone to see me." He sighed, then tapped his chest. "I saw a woman who read broken books like they were precious, who laughed at pepper burns on her tongue. That woman felt real." "She is," I said, tears slipping now. "But she's the same woman who ran from herself." He stepped back, resting against a shelf that wobbled under his weight. "I need time," he murmured, "to know if I can love both parts or if one cancels the other." "I understand," I said, though the words tasted like defeat. Outside, my father's silhouette shifted impatiently. I wiped my cheeks and squared my shoulders. "Whatever you decide, thank you for hearing me." Tunde nodded, but didn't offer more. The distance between us felt wider than the mansion gates I'd fled. In the SUV, Mother dabbed my eyes with a silk handkerchief. Father ordered Aaron to start the engine. Tires hissed over puddles. Lagos lights streaked by. Billboards, danfos, the tin rooftops of the life I was leaving. I pressed my forehead to the glass, watching the stall shrink behind us until it became a dim square of yellow under the rain. No one spoke on the ride. At the mansion gate, guards swung the iron doors open as if nothing unusual had happened. Inside, familiar chandeliers glared down. My old bedroom smelled of lilies and of distance. I lay awake, hearing the air conditioning hum, colder than ever. Around midnight, I rose, pulled the jar of palm oil from my backpack, and set it on my vanity. The deep red glowed against polished wood, proof that the other life had not been a dream. Dawn seeped gray through the curtains. I dressed in plain jeans, the only pair I'd kept clean, and slipped downstairs. Father sat at the dining table, reading stock reports. He glanced up. "Morning." "I'm going out," I said. "Driver will take you." "I'll walk," I replied, already heading for the door. His newspaper rustled, but he didn't argue. The mansion steps led down to a street that smelled of fresh bread from the corner bakery, same as always. Yet each smell felt amplified, tinged with urgency. I walked past stunned gardeners, through the gate, and into a city waking with honks and roosters. I didn't stop until I reached the bookseller's street. "Mr." Benson was unlocking the stall. Surprise lifted his brows. "Back so soon, Bella?" he asked. "May I come in?" He stepped aside. The air inside was cool, still carrying last night's storm scent. I walked to the poetry shelf and placed an envelope there. 3 months' wages in cash, what I owed him for my parents' abrupt intrusion. "I'm sorry," I said. He put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Money's not the apology," he said. Then he handed the envelope back. "But if you need to repay something, start by telling yourself the truth each morning." I nodded, throat tight. Footsteps sounded at the door. Tunde entered, toolbox in hand, eyes wary. "Needed a quiet place to think," he said to Mr. Benson. Then he saw me. The stall seemed to tilt. Mr. Benson slipped out, giving us space. We stood among the books like characters waiting for the next chapter. Tunde set the toolbox down. "I didn't come to yell," he said. "I wouldn't blame you if you did." He shook his head. "Last night, I felt like an engine flooded with fuel, too much to spark. So I went home, wrote till dawn." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "A poem. Can I read it?" I nodded. He cleared his throat, voice low. "Two rivers meet, one clear, one red with clay. They wrestle, twist, turn muddy, then settle into a single song. Clarity and color both survive, carrying silt and light to the sea." He folded the paper. "That's us," he said. "Messy currents. I'm still scared, but rivers don't stop flowing because they're muddy." Hope fluttered, fragile. "What now?" I asked. He stepped closer. "I choose the woman who earned her own coins and the woman who has a mansion she doesn't worship. I choose both because together they make the only honest Bella." Tears spilled, but this time they felt light, like new rain. And I choose the man who writes instead of punching walls, what? Who fixes engines and people with the same hands. He smiled slow. Then we start again. No walls, no fake names. Agreed? Agreed. We sealed it not with a kiss, but with shared silence, letting the promise sink deeper than words. Tunde saved, and I matched his savings naira for naira, but in his account, not as a gift. When the total hit the number he'd set in childhood dreams, we rented a small workshop. We painted the sign together, Tunde and Bella Motors, grease and gear, words and wit. Underneath, in smaller letters, Tunde insisted we add, every engine has a story. One dusty evening after we locked the shop, Tunde tugged my braid, grown longer now, still short of its old length, and said, "Remember the woman in the cracked mirror on that book cover?" "Yes," I said, smiling at the memory of broken seams. "She believed her cracks were the whole story," he said. "Turns out they were just chapter headings." We walked home along a street alive with vendors' calls, exhaust, laughter, crying babies, sizzling suya, all the sounds of a city that never chose one color for its river. I laced my fingers through his. "Bella," he said quietly, voice like a promise at dawn. "Yes?" "Tomorrow, can we buy more chalk? I want to write a poem on the workshop wall. Something about rivers that meet." I squeezed his hand. "Buy 2 boxes," I said. "We'll let everyone write their verse." He laughed, the sound merging with evening traffic, and the city, as if listening, sent a warm breeze that carried dust, spice, and hope, proof that muddy waters can flow clear when light hits just right.